You're watching Cricket World TV. This is Cricket World Live. The West Indies are the 2012 ICC World Twenty20 champions. They've beaten Sri Lanka by 36 runs in a final that took its time to get going. But Daniel, who's with me once again, it exploded into life towards the middle and rather petered away at the end.
Yeah, it was a bizarre final. All the action was in the middle 20 overs, wasn't it, really? Slow start from the West Indies and then a bit of a meander to the conclusion. That's
right, the West Indies, a very slow start, but they accelerated to score 137 for 6. We sort of thought, well, it's a final, anything can happen. Sri Lanka had a good start, then struggled, and were then bowled out for 101. It was a lot closer earlier on in the day. The Australia women retained their title by beating England by just 4 runs. We'll be chatting about that a little bit later on. We've also got Aaron Kumar, who's going to be absolutely delighted, being a West Indian fan himself. He's going to be talking to us very shortly. We've got an interview with Jeff Kruzinic, a Croatian international. He was talking to me earlier in the day about Australia's tournament, about the women, and also a little bit of an insight into 2020 cricket below the top class international level. And we're going to see if we can catch up with Chetan, Narula, who's out there in Colombo, a little bit later on as well. First up, though, let's take you through the game summary. The West Indies batting first. They won the toss. It was a no-brainer, really, to try to bat first, get runs on the board. Johnson Charles never settled. He was out for naught. Chris Gale, 3 runs in 16 deliveries before he was trapped in front by Ajanta Mendis. Dwayne Bravo was trapped in front by Ajanta Mendis for 19. Kieran Pollard, he fell for 2. Andre Russell fell for a golden duck. Ajanta Mendis taking figures of 4 for 12, but the standout performer by a huge distance in the West Indian batter line, Marlon Samuels, 78 in 56 balls, 3 fours and 6 sixes. He almost on his own carried the West Indies to a score. Darasamy played his part. He came in at the end and made 26 not out in 15 deliveries, and after Samuels fell in the 18th over, Dinesh Ramdin was unbeaten on 4. The bowling figures for Sri Lanka: Angelo Matthews 1 for 11, Kula Sakara 0 for 22, Lasith Malinga, he was taken for 39 runs by Samuels, 3 sixes in 1 over, 4 overs 0 for 54. Ajanta Mendis, complete contrast, 4 for 12 for him, and Akila Dhananjaya, 3 overs 1 for 16. I thought he bowled very well for a 19-year-old on his first major final, and Jeevan Mendis, 2 overs 0 for 20. Daniel, that innings from Marlon Samuels, without that, the West Indies were finished. He really did play outstandingly well.
Yeah, I think there was something like 48 to 12 overs or something pathetic like that, and then he took well over 100 off the last 10. He scored the bulk of them, and Darren Sammy always goes under the radar, and he played his part. I think he should take a lot of credit for the way he's captained the side and bats and bowls usefully. Never going to win you a match, but always contributes.
Okay, let's take you through the Sri Lankan scorecards. It's not a particularly pretty sight. Only 3 players making double-figure scores. Mahela Jayawardene, he batted nicely at the top of the order. He made 33. Kumar Sangakkara, 22. Those two teaming up yet again for a substantial partnership. They put on 42. Thank you, Daniel. The maths almost got there. Nuwan Kulasakara at the end made 26 in 13 balls, but really, by the time he had come to the crease, it was game over. Dilshan fell early, bowled by Rampal. That was dramatic. The stump cartwheeling out of the ground. Angelo Matthews bowled by Sammy for 1. Jeevan Mendis and Tisara Pereira were both run out for 3. Laru Tiramani caught on the boundary for 4. Lasith Malinga caught for 5. That was the winning moment, actually. He was caught by Bravo, and Ajanta Mendis perished similarly. He was also caught by Bravo off the bowling of Samuels, all-action hero, really, Marlon Samuels, and Dhananjaya was stranded with the non-strikers, then having not faced a ball. Bowling figures for the West Indies: 4 overs 1 for 24 for Samuel Badri opening the bowling. Rampal, 3 overs 1 for 31. He got that key wicket of Dilshan. I think from that point on, the West Indies thought, we're in this game. Early wicket, get one of the big 3 out early. Samuels, 4 overs 1 for 15. You can't keep him out of the action. Chris Gale, 2 overs 0 for 14. Nareen, 3.4 overs, 3 for 9. So he had a bad start to the tournament, and he'd really come on strong in the last 2 or 3 games. And Darasamy played his part, 2 overs 2 for 6. So we're going to be catching up with Aaron Kumar very shortly. Before we do so, Daniel, what did you make of that Sri Lankan innings? There was a moment there where there was a little bit of rain about. It was almost as if, we're behind on Duckworth Lewis, we've got to start throwing the bat at everything. Or do you think they were just behind the run rate and had to go for it?
I think they were behind the run rate before that even arrived. Jai Ward and Sangakkara were always the big partnership, and they both fell relatively quickly together, and the run rate at that stage was 10 and over required, and the middle order, 2 new batsmen in, it was never going to be very easy.
Now, you've sort of referenced the fact that Javadine and Sangakkara won't be around forever. Perhaps now they're going to go on until the, where are we in terms of, 2014, the World 2020. But hold on, Aaron's on the line. I'm just going to hold that thought. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, JP. How you doing?
I'm very well, but again, last time I spoke, you were doing even better, and you would probably be another level of excitement and ecstasy.
Oh, absolutely. You know, years and years of following the West Indies, and so much heartache in global events, and even more so at the hands of Sri Lanka. So, yeah, it was absolutely a brilliant moment for the whole people of the Caribbean, really. Yeah,
let's just sort of take the game right from the very start. What did you make of that West Indian innings? To say it started slowly would be an understatement. They were really struggling. A lot of people sort of keep an eye on Twitter and things were sort of saying, well, they've lost the game already, but Marlon Samuels held it together. But what did you make of that start?
It was very curious, wasn't it? In fact, in many ways, it was very reminiscent of the first game where they played Sri Lanka in the group stages there. They just couldn't get any momentum going, and I think one of the commentators said that the only difference after the power play was Gale was still there, but then Gale actually went just before the power play this time too. So it was strange, wasn't it? Because Charles got out early, and then Gale just really couldn't get anything going. And I think it was 30 for 2, I believe, or something around that region off 10 overs. And as you say,
32 for 2, yeah.
Marlon Samuels to give them something to bowl at in the end.
I mean, the progression in terms of their innings, first 5 overs, 12 for 1, the next 5 overs, 20 for 1, 5 overs after that, 55 for 1, and then 50 for 3. So you can see where the damage was done. I mean, there are clearly several different ways of constructing a 2020 innings, but I don't think that would have been the plan.
No, absolutely. Yeah, he scored 30 off the first 10 and then 100 off the last. I mean, it's. I think in a way though, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think Sri Lanka got 139 the other night against Sri Lanka, and that was a winning total. In a funny sort of way, although 137 doesn't sound a lot, and it's one of them in-between scores. I think the way it happened, as you said, by getting 100 off the last 10, it gave the West Indies that kind of little lift going in at half-time. And then when they got Dilshan out early, I think the team really did feel a boost there.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point, Aaron. That early wicket was absolutely key, and I could sort of see from that point on there was a real sense of belief amongst the West Indies that they thought, yeah, we're in this game now. If say, Dilshan and Javadine had got in 20, 30, 40, then it would have been a completely different game. So perhaps we shouldn't sort of underestimate the role Ravi Rampal's played in this.
No, absolutely. I think if you look at Rampal, I think he was just saying himself, I think towards the end of the innings he has been a bit expensive, but at the start he has done pretty well with the new ball in almost every game he's played. And Dilshan is that kind of player, isn't he? He can be so notorious, and he's had a good record against the West Indies. He can, especially a relatively low-scoring game like that, he can take it away from you in a hurry. So to get him, I think he just rallied the team. And then I think it was a bit strange, wasn't it, with the rain starting to fall. Joe Warden was kind of caught in 2 minds there, wasn't he, a little bit? Do they up the run rate, or do they just play normally? And I think he almost got caught out a little bit there, and then from there the game was pretty much all with the West Indies. Yeah,
we were sort of just having a bit of a debate, or about to have a bit of a debate in the studio about that one, and whether it was the Duckworth-Lewis, or it's raining, we're behind on Duckworth-Lewis, or whether it was just a simple fact, you know, the run rate has climbed to 7, 8, 9, we've got to get on with it. Did Duckworth-Lewis really play a part, or was it just going to happen?
Sure, I think you're probably right. At some point, they definitely had to put their foot down on the accelerator. I just felt the fact that the way Mahela did seem to get the sheet out, and he was looking at it quite intensely, and then that particular over, he was playing some very expensive shots. As you say, it could be the fact that they were getting considerate behind the rate, but I did feel with the rain falling, Duckworth-Lewis kind of was on his mind a little bit there.
Now, apart from the Champions Trophy success 10 years ago, Aaron, this is quite a long wait for a world title for the West Indies. I think, well, certainly none of us in the studio were alive back in 1979 when the West Indies last won at all. What does this mean for the Caribbean and their cricket going forward?
I think it means everything. I mean, I think if you go on a lot, just even the fan forums or speaking to people from the Caribbean, I think the biggest thing is they love the game. I mean, people say that, yeah, basketball and so many other sports, and that is true to an extent, but if you go to the Caribbean, there's such a big passion for cricket. They love cricket, and I think it's been heartbreaking to see guys like Chris Gale not able to play in the last few years with the IPL and all the other things that have come in the way. And you just felt finally coming into this tournament, they were all so united, and everyone was really not maybe expecting. They weren't sort of like really expecting it, but they really were. There was this kind of quiet confidence and optimism, and it's all kind of come together, especially in the last two matches. I think people in the Caribbean are going to be delighted. Lots of partying tonight for sure.
Well, yeah, we're going to let you go and get the party started, Aaron. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you during the World 2020. Enjoy your night.
Thanks a lot, JP. Have a good one.
Thank you. So, Aaron, Daniel, we're almost sitting on the fence a bit on whether it was sort of Duckworth Lewis induced or just the fact that they thought, look, we're behind the run rate, we've got to get on with it.
Well, I think it wasn't Duckworth Lewis induced. I think they were just going further and further behind, and then Jai Warner was the main hope, and then he went, and the end was always going to come pretty quickly, I think, after that.
Now, the point I was just about to make before we got hold of Aaron, they've got to get hold of him and let him go and have his party. He's obviously waited a long time for that. 2009 final, Yunus Khan captained Pakistan to victory and promptly retired from 2020 cricket. I wondered if Javadina had won today, whether he might have decided to step out on top of the world. Do you think he'll now carry on and the others will try and put this to right in 2014?
Well,
early days, I know.
2014, 2020 and the 2015 World Cup, so either of those could be possible last hurrahs for him and Sangakkara and Dilshan. I don't think... Well, they can't lose all three at once because that would be a disaster, but I think they'll hang on for a bit longer yet. Okay.
So there we go. If you're just joining us, Sri Lanka have been beaten by the West Indies today by 36 runs. So the West Indies are the new World 2020 champions. They'll hold that crown for a couple of years. We're back in Bangladesh in 2014. Then they're going to try and do in 2014 what the Australia women have done today in retaining their title. They were pretty impressive. Just give you a quick rundown of that game. Australia batting first, making 142 for 4. Jess Cameron very impressive in making 45. England pushed them very, very close. They closed on 138 for 9. There were 3 wickets for the left-arm spin of Jessica Jonathan. She bowled particularly well. Daniel, your thoughts on that particular game? First of all, I'd like to say I thought it was a wonderful advert for the women's game and 2020 cricket in general. Really good game.
Yes, it was very close. England looked to be out of it from when Charlotte Edwards went, really, in the 8th over, but they just kept going with Brindle and Gunn and Hazel all kept hitting boundaries just when the rate was starting to get out of control, and unfortunately not quite doing it in the end. It's quite strange how both of the unfancied teams won today. West Indies and Australia were both second favourites, I think it's fair to say, going into the finals, and they both won. I know Australia only were 4, but it was looking pretty comfortable most of the match.
Yeah. And we mentioned last night, didn't we? We both thought the 11-4 against Australia was generous, and I certainly didn't go down to the bookies and put a cheeky pound on, did you?
No, certainly not. No.
No, that's a shame, because we might have won a few quid. For me, that game was won almost quite early on. Australia came out and hit sort of 50, 60 runs in the first 7 overs, and England, they didn't bowl particularly well. They were a little bit shocked by that, and from there they were playing catch-up.
Well, 142 is always a good score in women's cricket, and it just runs on the board in the final, added to that pressure. England the favourites, another pressure. And they all seem to... Are they becoming the South Africa of women's cricket, do you think? Missing out on 2 tournaments in a row that they were the favourites for going into it.
Possibly, but you've also got to remember in 2009 they won both tournaments when they were overwhelming favourites. So
yeah, I suppose.
This is their first loss in a World Cup final since 1988.
Oh, that's not too bad a record.
No, they've not got too bad a record at all. The first loss by an England team, if you include the men, in a World Cup final since 1992. And it was interesting that Australia, in some respects, I thought today they had to raise the game very much. Certainly the way they batted early on. Their spinners, I thought, were outstanding against England. But in other respects, they weren't all that great. Particularly, they dropped 3 catches.
Well, it seemed like they just kept wanting to keep England in the game towards the end, and they spilled 2 or 3 very easy catches after Blackwell had caught quite a difficult one at cover low down. And they just didn't seem to want... Maybe it was nerves getting over the line, I don't know, because they're usually a good fielding side.
But yeah, they took... Alex Blackwell took an absolute stunner. There was some wonderful work on the boundary from Rachel Haynes, and then they just dropped these sort of 3 sitters. So still perhaps work to do, but they won't be worrying about that right now. Now while we're on the topic of Australia, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of Cricket World now called Jeff Grzynic. He's a Australian-born Croatian international. He's written a book called... he's written 2 books, in fact, one of them called Machine Guns and Cricket Bats. And I caught up with him earlier on today. Obviously, we were speaking ahead of the 2 finals, just to chat a little bit about the World 2020 and also to get an insight into 2020 cricket at European level. Joining me now is Jeff Grzinich. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, John. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Now, just for those listeners who might not have heard from you, just give us your backstory and tell us why you're sort of qualified to talk about 2020 cricket.
Well, basically, I actually played cricket for Croatia in Europe, the ICC European division there, and basically for the last 10 years I've run around in Croatian colours playing for the Baggy Reds and played sort of pretty much all around Europe, and I've also written a couple of books, particularly the latest release is a book called Machine Guns and Cricket Bats, which basically documents the last 10 years of playing cricket around Europe and all the different places I've been to and the experiences I've had, and obviously the game now in Europe is played at using the 2020 format. So that's sort of how I come into things.
Now we'll talk about European 2020 in a little while, Jeff. I want to get your thoughts on the World 2020. How have you enjoyed it so far?
Well, look, the limited games that I've seen, I've actually just played a little bit of a tournament myself in Corfu, Greece, which was a 2020 tournament. So I've sort of missed the first half of it, but I sort of got back and started getting into the finals, which was quite interesting to watch. And obviously, I live in Australia, and unfortunately, sort of we got exposed a little bit, I suppose, once Watson and Warner sort of their form, the 2020 game being what it is, sort of the middle order was sort of exposed a bit for us when Watson and Warner and to a lesser extent Hussey sort of didn't perform, and very strong in the spinning department, and Sri Lanka in particular, and I just like the way they bowl, and I just think Pakistan as well in the game against Australia, and thought they were really, really good. I think they've got spin bowlers for the first 10 overs, which was remarkable, but that obviously showed that the conditions were sort of favouring the slower bowlers who turned the ball, and the sort of pitch didn't really sort of get up too much, but it took a lot of spin. So look, it's been a fascinating tournament. I've really, really enjoyed what I've seen.
Now, Australia have made it to the semi-finals for the third time, of course. I suppose you've got to be reasonably encouraged, potentially with the likes of the young fast bowlers coming into the side, Patrick Cummins and Mitchell Starc looking very good. Yeah,
look, I think they would have done even better had the conditions suited that sort of bowling a lot more. I mean, obviously, as I sort of hinted at earlier, I actually think the tournament was probably more one where you needed to sort of look at your spinning stocks a little bit more, and obviously we had Brad Hogg and Doherty playing. They're two reasonable spinners. They're pretty good. Sort of Australia maybe underplayed someone like a David Hussey as well, who could have chipped in the middle order, but also added a bit of another option to maybe.
And the men couldn't reach the final, but the women are going great guns, and they obviously played against England in the final as well. So you must be pretty pleased for their performance.
Yeah, look, the Southern Stars thing, that's another fantastic story right there. Again, following the T20 men's, are sort of, on the same sort of the pages and the Twitter, etc., you get a lot of the information on the way the skills are going as well. And look, that's just a fantastic performance by them. I'm really, really, really happy for them and proud. And look, you know what, we couldn't do it in the men, so let's jump on board the ladies.
And you mentioned you've been playing some 2020 cricket yourself, Jeff, out there in Corfu for Croatia. How did that go, and what's next on your agenda?
For people that don't understand the way the system works, it's basically a divisional type thing, and we got relegated last year from the first division in Europe to the second division. So the main thing for us was obviously to make sure we stayed in the division, which we did quite comfortably. And look, it was always going to be a bit of a tough tournament for us. We were sort of missing our key player, and as I sort of alluded to earlier, I think key players in 2020, they do make a really big difference. I mean, obviously, like a Gale in the West Indies, and that's we missed Chris Pivac, who's our vice captain, and he's a hard-hitting opening batsman and can really challenge in a few of the games. And you miss someone like that, that's really going to set you on fire. He scores at 120 something. Strike rate, which is fantastic in any competition, but particularly in European 2020s, and he's also great in the field, and he's a handy bowler for us as well. So look, we missed him. We missed a couple of other guys. Their regular keeper didn't play, and another one of top order batsmen. So look, but on the positive side, we stayed in the division, and we also were quite fortunate to blood 5 new local guys that born and bred Croatians that live over there and play in the local domestic competition. So that going forward in a development point of view is fantastic. So overall, we've got to take a lot of positives from the tournament.
And a few more chapters in there for your next book, perhaps.
Yeah, look, it's a fascinating game, cricket, and the places it can take you and the things it can do for you in your life is just amazing. And look, the machine guns and cricket bats at the moment is really going great guns, and I'm pretty happy with the way things are going there. And look, if it continues the same, then yeah, definitely. Lots happened on this tour. There's definitely a couple of chapters there. So if it sort of keeps going the way it is, then I'll definitely sort of take some time out and put something down on paper and maybe write a third book.
Jeff Grzinich talking
Joining
to
me
us there.
now
Great
is
to catch up with him. By the way, his book is right here, Machine Guns and Cricket Bats. I thoroughly recommend it. Been dipping in and out of it since he was very kind enough to send us a copy. We did a competition with it as well, which went down pretty well. On the subject of books, Cricket World we've published books as well. This is our first one. This is actually on my phone on my Kindle. That's our vintage interviews, but we'll be doing a few more of those as time goes on. We're also producing a book on the ICC World 2020. Now, Daniel, we should start having a think about a title, really, shouldn't we? So it's got to be something to do with the West Indies.
Well, something based around the way the carefree manner in which they play their cricket, perhaps, in the semi-final and the final. They look like they're just playing some league game, aren't they? With this
That's quite a long title for a book.
Well, I know that. Maybe you can condense it slightly.
Yeah, listeners, do get in touch if you can think of a good snappy title for our book. But basically, this book is a diary, if you like, of the World 2020. Right from back in June, it starts with all our sort of build-up and thoughts. Every match report, every scorecard. We've done a lot of analysis of each game, which hasn't appeared on the website. So this is exclusive content. We've got some all the previews, some history pieces in there as well. It's going to be quite a hefty. Well, I say hefty. It's going to be certainly about the size of Jeff's book, I would think, by the time we're finishing with it. So really looking forward to getting that into the e-store probably tomorrow, maybe Tuesday, and then hopefully looking to get the actual paperback out towards the end of the week. So if you're looking for some reading material or some Christmas gift ideas, then Cricket World Books is the place to look. Daniel, as we begin to wrap things up, really, we'll hopefully be talking to Chetan shortly. But what about your highlights of the tournament?
Well, as I've already mentioned, the way that the West Indies played in the semi-final and the final for me has been a breath of fresh air, really. I mean, you look at the first semi-final when Sri Lanka played Pakistan, both teams were nervous. They were like their lives depended on it. And the West Indies, with their strange dance and whatever they've got, and led by Chris Gale usually, they just looked completely different. They looked like they didn't care, but obviously they did, and it's paid off for them.
No fear cricket.
No fear.
I think is what you were referring to in terms of the book title.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important message to the West Indies. If I cut you off, then you know why, because Chetan's sort of waiting to join the fun. Important, I think, for the West Indies to win and perform well, despite the fact that Chris Gale didn't score runs. It sends out an important message, doesn't it?
Yes, well, a lot of people said Chris Gale was the only man that could win West Indies a match, but Marlon Samuels certainly showed that today. Chris Gale's 3 off 16 balls or something certainly didn't help them at all, and Samuels was brilliant. Sammy chipped in, Narine, so it was certainly been a team effort throughout the tournament.
Yeah, and another thing we were talking about just before we came on the air was demise might be too strong a word, but Lassit Malinga went for 54 runs today, and you mentioned that he hasn't really been at the top of his game for a little while.
No, he's just not quite. I mean, when you've got such a brilliant start to your international career, it's very difficult to keep up the tempo, really. But I don't know whether he's carrying a bit of weight or something. It looks like he might just be carrying an extra couple of pounds, I don't know, but today he didn't hit his Yorkers. He was just a little bit short, and that's the way it goes when you rely on Yorkers.
Okay, well, on that note, it's time to bring in Chetan early. He's been at the game today, and let's see what he makes of it all. Hello, Chetan.
Hello.
Now, you're I presume, sort of in the vicinity of the ground. I imagine the atmosphere there is pretty flat.
Hi, John. Yes, at the ground, quite a few people have left, but the real party is going to start tonight when the West Indies get their hands on the trophy in what has been a completely disbelieving turnaround of events after they scored only 137 runs in their T20 overs. So it's an atmosphere of disbelief, let me tell you first up.
Now, let's just sort of look back on the game, a remarkable game, but just go back to the start with the West Indies innings. I mean, they just didn't seem to be able to get any sort of momentum going, struggled. How did you see it until obviously Marlon Samuels came in and changed things around?
Well, John, first of all, let me just say it was the most disciplined bowling attack from Sri Lanka. They had a particular plan in mind because the West Indies batsmen like to hit any sort of full-length deliveries. So they were bowling short of a length, and then once they were doing that, the West Indies batsmen did not have a plan B to counter that bowling. And what we saw that they just could not live with that sort of bowling. And well, it took them a lot of overs to break through. And I think Marlon Samuels played a fantastic innings to get them to that total. And the way he treated Lasith Malinga in front of a packed stadium, the atmosphere totally against West Indies, Sri Lanka on top. And despite of that, he got that innings going, got them to this total across 100, 237. It was a fabulous fight back from Marlon Samuels.
And then when Sri Lanka came out to bat, they obviously lost Tilakarani Dilshan early, but they looked to be okay with Javadena and Sangakkara, and then seemed to slightly lose the plot. Do you think the rain and the Duckworth-Lewis put them off, or was that just the fact they got behind the run rate and had to push and couldn't bring it home?
Well, yes, I think it was a big turnaround. I thought Muttiah Muralitharan and Kumar were dealing with the run rate situation quite well. They were just trying to get close to the total and probably reserving a full-out blowout against the bowling in the last 6 or 7 overs with wickets in hand. But once the back started coming in, there was a moment where Muttiah Muralitharan checked the scoring sheet. Kumar Sangakkara had just gotten out. Sri Lanka were behind on the scoring rate as per Duckworth-Lewis scoring couple. And they just decided to go for the shot, and Jayawardene got out, and then there was that mini collapse, and Sri Lanka completely lost the plot. So it was not even rain, it was not even proper rain, because the groundsmen did not go for the covers as they usually do in Sri Lanka. It was just a very, very light drizzle, but it really panicked the Sri Lankan batsmen, especially their captain in the middle, and that was the turning point of the match.
Now, Chetan, you've attended several matches over the years. I'm just sort of thinking ones you've done where I've spoken to you afterwards, including the World Cup final last year, IPL finals. Where does this one rank in terms of your experience?
Well, 2 World Cups I've covered now in 2 years, and I think this one ranks pretty high in the matches, the best matches that I've seen. I remember the England-South Africa game. I remember the at Chennai. I remember the India-England game, which was tied at Bangalore, and of course the final then, the India-Pakistan match, which had caught quite a lot of seesawing at Mohali. And even in this tournament, we have had some good games. The West Indies-Australia game, all the rain truncated, but it had some good fun because West Indies batted very well, and then Australia got great guns, and we were in for a close finish. But this one is right there at the top of the list, along with those ODIs, because simply the way the West Indies turned this game around from scratch, they just came out full of energy with their batting, with their bowling and their fielding. They were excellent in the field, held their catches, stopped the runs. There was a couple of chances that went off them, but again, they were fielding absolutely everything very well, and what a deserving victory.
And finally, Chetan, we understand that Shane Watson's been named as the man of the series. Do you think there should have been any other contenders? And what about perhaps a highlight of the tournament for you to put you on the spot?
Right. No, I don't think Shane Watson, there's any other contender apart from Shane Watson for the man of the series award. If you want a particular memory from me, the best moment I thought of Shane Watson was when the first match he was bowling against Chris Gayle. And he bowled a bouncer, and Gayle tried to duck under it and got hit on the helmet. He got Gayle out in the first match, and he's the only bowler in this tournament who's kept Gayle quiet. Of course, in the semi-final, he was hit all over the park by Chris Gayle in a sort of revenge. But again, the only bowler in this tournament who at least kept Gayle quiet once. And yes, Chris Gayle failed twice against Sri Lanka. But again, the way Shane Watson bowled against Chris Gayle, with a plan, with guts, that really stood out. And of course, he single-handedly carried Australia into the semi-finals. We saw how the middle order was very, very fragile against spin on a slow attack. So no other deserving candidate than Shane Watson for the Man of Tournament award.
And just to finish off, Chetan, a tournament highlight overall for you, perhaps one moment that might just stick in the memory forevermore?
I think this particular match, I think this is the best memory that we take away from this tournament, because against Sri Lanka in a packed stadium, packed means packed to the full. This is the best crowd in this particular tournament so far. The atmosphere that Sri Lanka is famous for, everything going for them. Then the slow start, the first 10 overs, no runs, absolutely no runs, and then Marlon Samuels playing that innings, and then again the turnaround when they were in the field. This is the standout match from this 2012 ICC World T20.
Chetan, brilliant. Thank you for your efforts in covering the tournament for us, and we'll no doubt catch up at some point in the future.
It's been a pleasure, John. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, so it was almost a privilege to get the view from the ground, really, and there certainly sounds that people have already started to leave and to go home, because the majority would have been supporting Sri Lanka, of course.
Yes, it's a shame for Darren Sammy and his team that they'll have to parade around an empty stadium, perhaps, but that's the way it goes when you're playing away from home, and Sri Lanka will be disappointed. Now,
I'm just sort of thinking how a parade back at home might work for the West Indies. Would they have sort of separate receptions on each island? That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm not sure what they'll do there. I certainly have to have one on Trinidad, I think, because a lot of the players...
Well, this is true, yes. Bravo, Ramsey and Pollard, but...
Ryan, yes.
I'm sure the trophy will sort of do its tour around the Guyana and Jamaica, which I think, again, is just fantastic for the Caribbean islands. Okay, we're just about coming to the end of Cricket World Live for the World 2020, of course, the last day, the last show. I'm just going to finish with our prediction league, because if you remember, all the five of us, that's Daniel, myself, Chetan and Aaron, who you've been hearing from today, and Andrew, our producer, were sort of taking part in this, and well, pretty much we were all level going into the final round. Daniel, myself and Chetan, I'm pretty sure you all went for Sri Lanka. Andrew and Aaron both went for the West Indies, so they moved ahead on 19 points, and we had a few tiebreakers going on. The one that it came down to was the number of sixes hit. Now, the number of sixes in the match was pretty unusual for a 2020 game, just 8. And Aaron went for 15, Andrew went for 20, so on that basis, Andrew's a big smile, rueful smile in the background. Aaron is our prediction league winner. I just got to say well done to Daniel, because we had a few other tiebreakers we were just having a bit of fun with. He correctly identified leading wicket taker in Ajanta Mendis. Total wickets taken 15, that was closest to being absolutely spot on, and number of sixes hit, he went for 11, so well done, Daniel.
Thank you.
And if I blow my own trumpet, I went for total runs score 283, so the fact there was not very many runs at all in the end played in my favour. Okay, so we've come to the end of the ICC World 2020 2012. Any closing comments, Daniel, before we sign off?
Well, I think it's the West Indies, the joy that they brought to the tournament has really been the highlight for me, and that's the memory, I think, which will live on in the legacy of the tournament. Absolutely. Well, on those words, we shall draw our transmission to a close. Thank you to Aaron and to Chetan for joining us throughout the tournament. Thank you to Jeff for his time catching up with his in his evening out there in Perth. Andrew's been brilliant producing the show throughout, and that is all we've got time for this tournament. We'll be back, no doubt, in the future, but from Cricket World Live for now, it's goodbye.